Early morning at Misano. Welcome to race 2 of Fanatec GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli. Cars making their way out on track, ready for this second 50-minute race of the weekend. They raced yesterday evening in pretty high temperatures going into dusk. Today, it's a much cooler day, much more overcast than we've had for the last couple here at Misano. And the grid, based on a standalone second qualifying session, is a little more jumbled than perhaps the results of yesterday's race, which was an intriguing one. Won by this car, number 1, the Maserati, started yesterday by Leonardo Guarini, brought home by Carlo Tamburini, and that's starting on pole position based on Tamburini's time in Q2. Fanatec GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli, with this very much Pro-Am basis. There is a Pro-Am and an Am class. You've got some very quick pros within the Pro-Am cars. You've got some very quick Ams as well, very experienced drivers coming into this category. And with mandatory pit stops, there's the chance to share the car, share the costs, but you don't have to because the regulations do permit soloists. The downside to that is that you've got to get in and out of the car on the pit stop, and your compensation time, which I'll come to in a moment, is a little bit higher than the double driver entries, but you don't necessarily have to have a co-driver. Compensation times, what are those? Well, if you're in the top 3 in your class in a race, you carry 10 or 7 or 5 seconds into the next, and off the road already has gone the car that would have been at the back of the grid, Dennis Liebel. He's got himself off the dirt and continues on his way, but slightly embarrassing start to the morning. Straight out of the pit lane. I know it's cooler than the drivers are used to, but possibly a bit of weaving has caught out Dennis Liebel. Anyway, there's no damage. He can get to the grid. So what that means is that yesterday's top 3 in each of the classes will have longer pit stops, and it therefore, with the possible exception of any safety car intervention to the race, will change the result a little bit, because the winning car with an extra 10 seconds to serve in the pit lane, therefore is going to have to do quite a lot of hard work to overcome that on track. Think, though, of that Maserati going through the shot, the APM car, number 2 of Louis Pret's father, Philippe Pret, because that will have to serve 14 seconds. It won its class yesterday, but because Philippe Pret is a soloist, you get the extra time. That's the Am rival, a car that's had 1 win this year, the Mercedes of Gilles Vannelet and Jean-Luc Bobelic. And it's going to be Jean-Luc that starts. This is the view on board as he makes his way round to the grid. The Mercedes AMG run by Jérôme Policon's Acodis ASP team that we've got so used to seeing winning in GT3 over the last few years, but no longer in World Challenge, but still looking after customers in other categories. And Jean-Luc Bobelic has done so much racing over the years. He's been a mainstay of GT paddocks. And although perhaps he's not as quick as Gilles Vannelet, his co-driver, all the experience will be brought into play, no doubt, having been the 2022 GT4 European Series Pro-Am champion. Up to the grid just ahead of him there goes 53. That is the Pascal Gibon Christophe Bure Mercedes, and it is going to be Christophe Bure to start today on the final full row of the grid. Christophe Bure, another experienced racer from GT4 to the 24 Hours of Le Mans even, the Intercontinental Le Mans Cup, the early days of Blancpain Endurance, Creventic races, French GT, you name it, he's been there, he's done it. Jean-Luc Bobelic arrives on the grid. There, second on the grid, is Reinhold Koffler's KTM with that very distinctive up and forward bodywork. Reinhold Koffler second in yesterday's race. He also had a long pit stop to overcome, along with co-driver Martin Koch. So that sort of derailed the effort a little bit, and let's see what they can do today. Koffler starts. He's the one in the crash helmet, obviously. Martin Koch, his co-driver, stands alongside him. He'll do the second stint. Pit window between 20 and 30 minutes in this 50-minute race, and it will make sense to give Reinhold Koffler the lion's share of the driving duty, seeing that he is the quicker of the two. Just looking down to the grid, there's a gap, but it's about to be filled because Jörg Wiebahn's Mercedes AMG has arrived. Number 17, Laura Kreimer, starts in the KTM that she shares with Hubert Trunkenpolz, the Trunkenpolz family, the T in KTM, and Hubert Trunkenpolz, former motocross and endurance rider. Up to the grid then comes the NM Racing team, Mercedes of Jörg Wiebahn, the Spanish team that took a GT4 win yesterday, NM Racing. And the safety car now leaves the grid. That will blast round to its position towards the end of the lap. And the leading car, the other Lamborghini, drives forward, ready to position itself for the formation lap for the rolling start. So let's go to the grid. Antonia Rankin is down on the grid, and she managed to find one or two of the drivers before we go racing. Let's join Antonia on the grid.
Now, car number one on spot number one for a couple of days now. What a great weekend you've been having.
Yeah, we're having a good weekend. Today it's going to be probably a bit more difficult at the end of the stint, but we're confident and let's see how it goes.
Why is it going to be more difficult?
Because we're going to have the 10-second penalties, so then we'll need to catch up on old tires. It's more difficult, but you know, that's the challenge, we take it.
Now, it's not the biggest grid, obviously. What is your strategy going to be with those 10-second penalties to make sure you can kind of maneuver around that?
It depends a lot on what the other people's going to do. Most likely, Carlos is going to stay on track. We're going to see when the window opens. If there's anything that happens, then I'll jump in. Otherwise, then we'll wait a bit more and you know, take it from there. But we need to see.
Okay, so quite reactive. Well, thank you and best of luck.
Thank you.
Leonardo Guarini, or Lego for short, and that is his car that he will, as you've been hearing, take over for the second stint. Carlo Tamburini goes first. Loris Hezerman starting number 98. Eric de Doncker, the grey-haired gentleman standing by the rear wing, he will do the second stint. Eric de Doncker, who's been racing on and off with SRO in GT racing, even since before SRO was formed, if that makes sense, because he was in that very first BPR GT race from which SRO morphed back in 1994. The grid now being cleared, engines will fire on the 1 minute board, and although the grandstands aren't as busy as yesterday there was the lure of watching Valentino Rossi, there's still a good day's racing ahead with GT2, GT4, McLaren Trophy and the Clio Cup as well. Pierre Caffer, who was the driver that took the fastest lap of yesterday's race, gets on board the LP Racing Audi, the sole Audi on the grid. It was one of the first brands to commit to GT2, but of course Audi's motorsport activities have really been changed in shape and priority over the last season or two. And Michael Doppelmayr, who drives the car with him, not as quick, so Pierre Caffer has got to really not only try and get that into the lead and build a gap early on, but hope that there is no safety car. If there is, then that rather derails the plan. Michael Doppelmayr went a lap down yesterday. Pierre Caffer got the car into the top 10 on the last lap, got ahead of Laura Kraimer, but Michael Doppelmayr's pace from earlier on had just cost them a little bit too much time. Loris Hezerman's then good to go. Loris, another very experienced GT racer, and 61 likewise. Ludovic Badet is going to drive with Mauro Ricci instead of Benjamin Ricci this weekend. 3 times LMP2 winner in the European Le Mans Series, Ludovic Badet, in the Thierry by TDS Racing Orica in the past. But Ludovic Badet, former Ferrari GT3 racer, he came out of Formula Renault many moons ago. Experienced driver as the grid take shape, and there Monegasque Philippe Pret is good to go. He is going to start 6th on the grid, and after a second class win yesterday in Am, has these 14 seconds to serve. You heard Lego, Leonardo Guarini, talking about the 10 for his car, but it's 14 for solo driver Philippe Pret. The battle really in the Am class is between this car and Mercedes number 87. You can see you don't have a rear view mirror anymore, you have a rear view camera. There's the television screen in the car. 888 Jörg Wiebahn, who's been a GT4 European Series class champion in the past. Massively experienced driver is Jörg Wiebahn. Comes to GT2 this year and has got good pace as ever. He's done the Nürburgring 24 hours. He's raced in the Creventic long distance series. He's done just about every GT4 championship going, I think, with the possible exception of America and Asia maybe, but he's done most of them and remains very quick. Stéphane Perrin will take over that car. And we've got 1 KTM in a bit of strife maybe. Down now goes the bodywork on Eric Yanis's car, former GT3 and A1 GP racer. Now that car, you can just see it in the distance, the black KTM behind the yellow and black Maserati, won at Paul Ricard, but then retired with a mechanical drama on the first lap of yesterday's race. So Jan Krabec, who was the championship leader, coming to Misano, no points yesterday, big disappointment, and really needs a good result here. On the one hand, if the car is fixed, it should fly, and slightly good news, if there is any, is that it won't have any extra time to serve in the pits. And Krabec and Yanis are both quick drivers. Formation lap underway then here at Misano. Cars accelerate away. And as the Carlo Tamburini Maserati blasts down towards turn 1, let's have a look at the grid with Carlo Tamburini starting on pole, and Reinhard Koffler alongside in that distinctive green and black KTM. Third is Loris Hezemans, and Pierre Caffer, always one to watch, Le Mans class winner years ago, will be fourth ahead of Ludovic Badet and then Philippe Pret. Seventh on the grid, the Mercedes AMG of Jörg Wiebahn, Alexandre Leroy alongside. Jean-Luc Boblique will start ninth, and Eric Yanis, a man to watch, 10th. Still perhaps getting used to this KTM, but he's a quick driver, so should make progress, as also should Simon Bertram 11th, Lara Kreimer 12th. Klaus Angerhofer will be 13th on the grid alongside Christophe Bure, and it is Dennis Liebel, after his off on the installation lap, who is going to round out the grid. So, as the cars make their way up to the left-handed turn 8, jinking left and right to get some warmth into the tyres. Anticipate Carlo Tamburini to go storming off into the distance if allowed, because he needs to build up that 10-second cushion over the opposition. But Reinhard Koffler will no doubt keep him on his toes. A rather pensive-looking Leonardo Guarini, who's been a GT2 regular over the last few seasons. He's also done a bit of Lamborghini Super Trofeo racing, but when we first saw him in GT2, it was aboard a Porsche, and drove quite a long time ago, like 10 years ago, in the so-called Gentleman Trophy within the early days of the Blancpain Endurance Series. That's really morphed into the Bronze Cup, but it was the Gentleman Trophy initially, and Leonardo Guarini served time in that before coming through the Lamborghini ranks and then into GT2 after a few years away. Came back when the GT2 concept started. Cars now then, weaving around, coming down towards turn 11, the fast kink that takes you round a series of right-handers. Each one tightens as you go through the sequence before the last couple of lefts onto the pit straight. Jean-Luc Boblique here moving left and right, not vigorous weaving, might quicken his pace in a moment so to do, but everybody being mindful that they don't want to tangle with another car. And there is, of course, a large number of AMS stroke less experienced drivers on this grid. It is aimed at the AM driver. Nothing wrong with, as Michael Doppelmayr does, bringing a gun for hire in Pierre Caffer in as the co-driver, but it's all aimed at the AMS to give them lots of track time, nice venues, good off-track hospitality, a good camaraderie in the paddock, and the manufacturers such as Audi, Porsche, increasingly now Mercedes and Maserati and KTM building cars for this championship. So GT2 continues to grow, bigger grids this year, and almost every round we seem to have new faces that come and have a look and either commit to the season or go away and make plans for the following year, having liked what they saw. So the Maserati, which debuted at the end of last season and has certainly caught on with 3 of them on the grid on pole position. Carlo Tamburini's car alongside Reinhard Koffler in the KTM, and down in the pit lane, Stéphane Perrin, Mercedes driver, watches Jörg Wiebahn get set for the start. Carlo Tamburini then number 1. We'll accelerate now out of turn 16. The lights on the gantry are red. The race is about to get underway. It is go at Misano. Good start by Tamburini. Not a great getaway by Koffler, and that means that Loris Hezemans in the Mercedes gets up the inside as they blast down towards turn 1. 4 wide in the pack, and one way up the curb, and mayhem breaks out at the first corner because there was a car seemingly without any brakes that went up the inside line, and Jean-Luc Boblique is out of the race. By the look of it, Philippe Pret has been involved in that as well. Yellow flags are out. There's bound to be, I would have thought, a safety car for that. But drama at the very first corner. It looked as though one of those cars, it may have been Jean-Luc Boblique's, just couldn't slow down. Maybe the brakes hadn't been pumped, and by going on the curb on the inside, tried to avoid the traffic, but in the end, harpooned. And we've lost, yes, safety car deployed. Alexandre Leroy backs out of it. We've lost Pret, we've lost Boblique, and there was a third car involved in that, which was another of the Mercedes. It may have been Jörg Wiebahn's car, but we'll have a look in a moment. That, I think, might take a little time to clear up, and it's also eliminated, sadly, 3 cars. So Philippe Pret, Jörg Wiebahn, Jean-Luc Boblique, all involved. Was Ludovic Badet's Mercedes caught up in it as well? There you can see the wreckage. That's the Wiebahn Mercedes getting going, and the front damage on Jean-Luc Boblique's Mercedes does rather suggest that was the one that was up the curb, almost as though he just couldn't slow the car down and needed to try and take evasive action, and I'm afraid couldn't get away with that. Big whack for Philippe Pret, and as I say, Ludovic Badet also is missing from the timing screen, but I did think he was on the grid. So we're behind the safety car, as you can see. And the field now turning down towards turn 12, but this will take a few laps. Right, that's the answer to Ludovic Badet. He is out of the race, having got caught up in it, and yesterday he retired as well after a puncture did damage, but you can see 2 cars need removing. There's debris on the racetrack as well. Joel Duval, the race director, calls for the safety car. Now have another look. Which Mercedes was it that went to the inside? Jean-Luc Beaubelic's car with the pink nose. Yeah, he just can't get the car slowed down. He gets up the inside, hits Vebaan and Pret, so takes both of them out of the race. And I think Badet, there is Ludovic Badet, who got, and did he get caught up in it, or was that a separate incident? Let's have another look. Yeah, Badet, I think, just went wide in avoidance, but I'm not convinced he picked up damage there necessarily. This is how Beaubelic saw it. Let's have a look. So Beaubelic just glances off Badet's car as he gets up the inside. So that's where Badet picked up the damage, but the big impact was Beaubelic collecting Pret and Vebaan. That was quite a drama. Jean-Luc Beaubelic is okay. He's out of the car, very disappointed. And just to add to the travails of the start, number 1, the leading car of Carlo Tamburini, is under investigation for jumping the start. So if a penalty comes to add to the 10 seconds they've got to serve in the pits anyway on the compensation time, that's really going to throw a curveball at them. And don't forget, this early safety car is exactly what Tamburini and Koffler and Hesmans and Kaffer do not need as the quicker driver, because it means there are fewer laps in which they can work their magic for their not so quick, or not as quick, co-drivers. So Carlo Tamburini leads the way, but we are still behind the safety car and will be for a lap or 2 more whilst the incident is cleared up at the first corner. Big impact, that, and lots of damage sadly done. What it does mean is we're going to have a new AM winner. Stefan Ortelli looks on from the pit lane, Monegasque neighbour of Philippe Pret, and looks after and coaches Louis, who was in the Fanatec GT races yesterday. But I'm afraid there's not a lot that Stefan can do now with Philippe Pret out of the race, the double Ferrari Asia-Pacific champion. That was Ludovic Badet walking back. And he has had a bad day, I'm afraid, with that car out at the first corner. So Carlo Tamburini trying to keep the tyre temperatures and pressures up after not even a lap of racing. Comes down towards turn 11 now. And race control investigating Tamburini's start then. So Carlo Tamburini leads Reinhard Koffler, Loris Hezemans 3rd, Pierre Caffer 4th, Eric Yanis 5th, and Simon Birch 6th. They're all in Pro-Am. That's your AM leader, number 24, Maserati 7th, Alexandre Leroy. In 8th place, back to Pro-Am, Laura Kreimer's KTM. They're 2nd in AM, 9th overall, Klaus Angerhofer. 10th, 3rd AM, Dennis Liebel. And 11th, 4th AM, is Christophe Bure, with 4 cars, the other 4 cars, all being eliminated in that first lap tangle. Badet out, Pret out, Vebaan out, Beaubelic out. So, real disappointment for the teams. Let's have a look at Tamburini's start then. He accelerates up through turn 16, and he was well ahead of Koffler when they got to the line. He accelerates away, then the lights go green, but Tamburini was already accelerating, wasn't he, while the lights were on red. So the race officials are having a look at that. The cars go over the timing line. Tamburini doing what he's meant to do in terms of keeping the tyre pressures and the temperatures up, moving the car around the racetrack. And the road is pretty much cleared on the outside of turn 1. The cars you can see just being brought back round the pit exit lane, so that will need to be clear before the racing can get underway. There are mandatory pit stops in this, so the cars can't be left there, of course, but won't take too long, I don't think, now for the very quick recovery work at Misano to be completed, and then the road as well as pit exit will be clear. Carlo Tamburini then will have to control the start again, but this time not a side-by-side race start, but the resumption of the race from behind the safety car. And as I say, this early safety car means that the pro drivers, the quicker drivers, can make less impact on the race, so it'll come down in a way to the AMs, depending on how long that safety car period lasts. But we've had the first 6 minutes. We've got another chunk of the race before we need to worry about the pit window, which might give Koffler a chance to have a go at Tamburini and see what he can do about getting the lead. Reinhard Koffler, experienced single-seater driver, and then when he ran out of money, had many years on the sidelines, was tempted back, I think largely by Hans Reiter, into the KTM Crossbow Challenge. He's raced in the ADAC GT Masters for KTM. He's done GT3 and GT4, runner-up in Pro-Am last year. And as you see, the safety car in this lap to get racing back underway. There, the green KTM, Reinhard Koffler, will certainly be on his toes, looking to try and get past Carlo Tamburini. Reinhard, more experienced driver. Carlo Tamburini up front, raced in Italian touring cars and then Italian GT last year. He was third in Pro-Am in the sprint and second in the Pro-Am bit of the Italian Endurance GT Championship. There's a sprint and an endurance in Italy. So Carlo Tamburini, experienced driver in a short space of time. He's done a lot of mileage, and let's see what he can do now as Koffler stays with him, coming out of turn 16 up towards the line. Light to green, green flag waves, racing again at Misano then, and Koffler lines up for a move to the inside, but largely I think that's to try to fend off Loris Hesmans in that Mercedes AMG, which is really quick in a straight line, down through turn 1. That's the right, left at 2, right at 3 as we look down from the drone, and Carlo Tamburini is edging away ever so slightly, but let's see what now Koffler can do behind him. Up towards turn 4, further back the KTM's there, Eric Yanis goes through. Younger brother of Jaroslav Yanis, himself another former GT and A1 racer, the two Czech drivers. But it is Yanis fending off Simon Birch. The cars sprint their way down towards turn 8. That's Pierre Caffer, who in theory ought to be up in the lead of the race in a sense. And drama for Yanis because yet again mechanical woes have hit and the car is stranded out on the circuit. So Eric Yanis, who was 5th over the line, gets not even as far as the end of the first sector before, just like yesterday, the KTM cuts out. So big disappointment. And whatever the dramas were of yesterday, they can't be fixed, seemingly. The RTR Projects car is out of the race so early. Now, whether it can get going again, we'll have to wait and see. It is still stranded as up towards turn 4 comes number 89 KTM. It accelerates into the corner and then just grinds to a halt on the edge of the road. So it is almost what happened yesterday when it stopped on the opening lap of the race around this part of the circuit. Now look, Tamburini is under massive pressure from Koffler. KTM to the outside, can't do it. Tries to dart to the inside, putting the pressure on the young Italian, and the Maserati bounces up onto the curb. Loris Hesmans is right there as well, looking for a way to join them. They battle for the race lead, and as they come across the line now, the end of the first proper racing lap, big flash of the lights by Koffler to try to distract Tamburini. Down to turn 1 they go. Gap 0.348 of a second. Tamburini from Koffler. Hesmans is 3rd. Bit of a gap back to the Audi then. Pierre Caffer in 4th place. So that car, for the moment at least, not staying with the leading group. 5th is Simon Birch, and 6th, the leading Am, Alexandre Leroy. As up now through turn 4 they go, having to be mindful of that stranded car. So there's no yellow flag in the timing screen display for that sector, but most definitely Yanis ain't moving. And he's now got a lap down. I think he might be trying to sort of power cycle that car back into life, but for the moment it remains stranded. Leaders are down at turn 8. Now, Pierre Caffer 4th, a little bit quicker on this lap in the first sector than Hesmans ahead of him. So maybe it takes the Audi just a little bit longer to turn on the tyres, and when they are up to proper temperature and he can really push, he'll make some progress. There he is in 4th place. 5th behind is there, the KTM of Simon Birch, Alexandre Leroy, who has done a little bit of historic GT racing in the past. He is in 6th place. Yellow flag now is shown in that first sector. And I wonder whether if Yanis can't get that car going, we're going to have to interrupt the race so it can be moved by the officials. So Loris Hesmans in 3rd, dropping back a little bit from Koffler, who has done the fastest lap of the race. He's right there behind Tamburini. Remember, the KTM has to serve 7 seconds in the pits over the regulation time, and 10 for that car that's leading the race, the Maserati of Carlo Tamburini. So as long as Koffler stays within 3 seconds, in theory, as long as they don't muck up the pit stop, he should be ahead for part 2, or the car should, because it will be taken over by Martin Koch. Over the timing line goes the race leading Maserati, then 7/10 of a second up the road now. Tamburini doing the fastest lap as he tries to stretch the margin. 9 more minutes before the pit window opens, and Tamburini is getting away just a touch, isn't he? Up towards now turn 4, and the KTM has been towed out of the way. So although it's out of the race, disappointingly, the road is clear, which is the good news. So that yellow can be withdrawn probably next time around. On this part of the circuit, Maserati being caught by KTM because Reinhard Koffler a little bit quicker within the first sector. See how the cars have their strengths. You always think of the KTM being better through the corners because it's a sort of smaller, more nimble car, but the Maserati with lots of grunt in a straight line able to counter that. And there are some fast, straight sections of Misano. So they're about to get onto one of those parts of the track, which will favour the Maserati now. This long run down towards the kink at 11. And then through the twiddly bits at the end of the lap, Koffler might well be able to come back. To the end of the middle sector they come. Maserati through, KTM through. Yes, indeed, Maserati quicker. But quicker than both of them is Loris Hezemans in third place. So again, using all of the grunt of the Mercedes towards the end of the sector, closing back up onto the tail of Koffler, who's late on the brakes. Look, going up towards turn 14 now. Little puff of smoke out of the back of the KTM, but Reinhard Koffler pushing on behind Carlo Tamburini. Accelerating now onto the pit straight, and as they do so, Tamburini, who did the fastest lap on the previous lap, still clearing the race lead. It was 0.7 of a second last time, it's 0.7 of a second this time, and Tamburini does a quicker, fastest lap. So the last one that he did was a 1:35.1. Yesterday's winner leads today. Yesterday's second place car, second today, and Loris Hezemans, who was 5th yesterday, running 3rd. Pierre Caffer, 10th yesterday in 4th place. But of course, you've got another driver yet to do a stint in these cars, and that will certainly change the format of the race. Alexandre Leroy going through with there Klaus Angerhofer as the second of the AMs, the KTM number 16, the car from the True Racing squad. And you've got to say that those KTMs looking a bit happier than the RCR Projects car that we saw grind to a halt yet again early on in the race. So number 16 KTM goes through. Klaus Angerhofer looking strong, as there is Reinhard Koffler. Loris Hezemans in 3rd spot, a second back from the KTM, and confirmation of that fastest lap last time through for Carlo Tamburini. And again, in that middle sector, Hezemans doing an absolute best on this lap. It's this section of the circuit just completed where that Mercedes is so strong. Bit of a twitch from the Maserati as a wheel is hooked onto the curb by Carlo Tamburini, but he's continuing to push and he's continuing to hold sway as that puff of smoke is there at the back of the KTM once more of Koffler. Carlo Tamburini towards turn 16. That's Pierre Caffer still charging along, conscious that his lap times are quicker than his co-driver Michael Doppelmayr, so he's got to do the hard yards. The incident in turn 1 at the start of the race is under investigation. So Pierre Caffer out of turn 3. There's the race leader with now the advantage of over a second. Carlo Tamburini getting away. And dare one suggest that Loris Hezemans looks a bit nearer to Koffler as he closes on the KTM. Pierre Caffer tries to go with him. Pierre Caffer's last lap was a 35.3, quicker than everybody ahead of him bar Tamburini. So he's quicker than Hezemans, he's quicker than Koffler at the moment. It's just a shame that the car seemed to take a little bit longer to come alive after the restart. Again, though, they seem to bunch up at turn 8, don't they? Tamburini caught under braking slightly by Koffler. Hezemans through in 3rd place. And the cars now sprint their way up through turn 9 and turn 10. Hezemans in that Mercedes always looks a bit sort of dragster-esque with that higher rear than front, but that car from the Motorsport 98 team, shared by Eric de Donker, massively experienced Belgian driver. He'll do the second stint. That's Pierre Caffer going through. He will give way to Michael Doppelmayr, the German bronze-graded driver. Tamburini it is then up front. Tamburini, who is graded silver. Reinhard Koffler behind him, another silver-graded driver. And Loris Hezemans, who we've seen in GT3 as well as GT4 and now GT2. He's another silver running in 3rd place. Caffer heads towards us, and he's gold, bearing in mind that he's won his class at Le Mans in the past. So up to the end of lap 8 they come with number 80, Simon Birch, going through in another of the quick KTMs. That car operated by the Razzoon More Than Racing stable. Lead gap down to 0.6 of a second, so a really good effort on that last lap by Reinhard Koffler. Nothing has come, as far as I'm aware, about that investigation for Tamburini's start, so that's for the moment at least in abeyance. The incident that took out the 4 cars on the first lap is certainly being looked at, but with them out of the race, it could only be either financial penalty or a grid drop carried into the next race. Down towards turn 8 goes Reinhard Koffler. And again, that car looking so good on the brakes, a little bit nearer to Tamburini. Reinhard Koffler continues to apply the pressure. The Maserati, you get the feeling, is the stronger car, but Koffler, with the KTM having been taken by the scruff of the neck, he's not letting him get away. Hezemans 3rd, Pierre Caffer then in the Audi in 4th spot, the sole Audi in the entry these days. They were pretty popular cars in the early days with the likes of Peter Gulinks and Bert Langin taking great success with one, and Loris Hezemans and Stinus Langin in the other. But right now, the sole car from the Ingolstadt firm, run by LP Racing, Luca Piri's team, in the hands of Pierre Caffer. There at the back of the grid, Christophe Bure, he's 10th, going after Dennis Liebel in the fight for penultimate place, and at the moment it is the KTM just ahead. Dennis Liebel, who's been a racer in the KTM Crossbow Challenge in Eastern Europe before coming into GT4 racing, getting quicker and quicker all the time. The lead gap to the eye is down once more, though. Reinhard Koffler having a real push as we approach the pit window, because the gap is only 0.3 of a second now, and this does not, therefore, help Tamburini one jot heading to that longer pit stop that he will have to serve. Koffler, second, comes out of turn 3. Now, is he going to try and get the lead on the track, or is he just quite content to sit there and do it on the pit stops? I think he wants to do it on the track. He's forcing a mistake out of Tamburini. He goes deep through turn 4. Koffler up the curb. Tamburini chops across the front and hangs on to the race lead, but only just. And Reinhard Koffler then riding shotgun now as they accelerate down towards turn 8. A big, big look on the inside, and Koffler goes through. Does he? Yes. Tamburini has to give him racing room there as they turn through the corner. Maserati on the outside line, but that's going to be the inside for turn 9. Absolutely dead set level as they head up towards the corner. Reinhard Koffler briefly through, but then on the outside line has to give way. Slots back into second place. Tamburini in the lead yet again. So the road came back to him, and his jump start will be looked at after the race. So he may or may not be a race winner on the road. He may or may not be on corrected times. Let's see. Up towards turn 12 they come. Again to the inside line goes Koffler. Can't do it there. Not really close enough to get fully alongside, but he's applying the pressure, and Tamburini's lines now are getting wider, and he's way up the curb. Look at 14. So that gives Koffler the chance again to challenge, but only on the outside line. Carlo Tamburini is being fortunate here in a sense in the layout of Misano's circuit, because every time Koffler attacks, the road seems to come back through left then right to Carlo Tamburini. He leads over the line. The gap 0.3 of a second last time, 0.2 this time, and they've all bunched up behind. Look, Hezemans is there in third place, fourth Pierre Caffer. So now it is only 0.7 of a second covering that leading 4-car group. Caffer right there on the back of Hezemans, and he's going to have a go. Look, coming up towards turn 4, and he's late on the brakes, and Pierre Caffer dives through Koffler almost into the back of the Maserati. Caffer goes wide, and that brings Hezemans back up alongside him, but then the road comes to Pierre Caffer. Well, the curb does, because that's what he drives over on the inside for the next corner. Right, after all that drama, the order is Tamburini from Koffler, Caffer up to third, Hezemans down to fourth, but the Mercedes, with all of the grunt in a straight line, fights back, except that Pierre Caffer sits in the middle of the road and makes sure that Hezemans ain't going to find a way past him. Confirmation that the jump start for number 1 is going to be looked at after the race. So what we have as the on-the-road result may or may not translate into the final result. Pierre Caffer really deep through turn 10, but now let's see what he can do about Koffler, who's a bit stuck behind the Maserati. Reinhard Koffler doesn't really want to have to be defending his place. He wants to be attacking the Maserati, but he might have to defend if Caffer gets up to him. Bit of trim flapping at the back of the KTM. Out of turn 12 and 13 they come now. So the pit window, 25 seconds away from opening. It will be open during the next lap, but these drivers I would have thought will stay out because they're the quicker of their driving combinations. So maximise the time they can do, unless the team thinks it's pointless, they're stuck in traffic, and they would do better, the co-driver would do better in clear air. Over the line goes Tamburini. Koffler second, 0.268 of a second last time. It's up to 4/10 now. Pit window is open. Speed building as they come up towards turn 4, and then hard on the brakes into that long right-hander. It's turn 4 into 5. From that angle, looks like just one corner, but there were sort of 2 bites to it, and then lots of curb used going out of turn 6. Some of the curbs here can be quite vicious. The majority are so low because of motorbike racing that you almost glide over them. But we did have yesterday in different categories a number of cars in strife with punctures in some races and even suspension damage in others. Down the pit lane early comes Dennis Liebel to give way to Dominic Olbert in number 90 KTM. So they get their pit stop done because their track position almost coincided with the window opening. 3 for the lead as they come out of turn 10. Tamburini still ahead of Koffler. Caffer third, and Hezemans down to 4th. Now let's see who's going to be the first one to blink out of this leading group. Who's going to come into the pit lane first? Pierre Caffer in the Audi for LP Racing. And it's another LP Racing car in the lead, locking up, going a little bit deep. Carlo Tamburini. Koffler again, look, tries to get up alongside. but that becomes the wrong line for turn 15. So Tamburini up towards the end of the lap. Koffler stays on track, so does Kaffer, so does Hezemans. So all four going as long as they can through the pit window, up towards the line. Koffler pulls out of the draft, has a look. All the time on the lights, trying to distract Tamburini. And is it working? Because increasingly, Tamburini's lines look less precise than Koffler's. Look there, just slightly wider at turn 2. Takes lots of curb for turn 3, but Koffler with a good exit. Accelerates now up towards turn 4. Again, just moves around in the mirror to try and distract Tamburini, who goes wide, but Koffler not able to squirt up the inside there. Has to slot in behind him. Kaffer closing up all the time. Alexandre Leroy into the pit lane to serve his regulation pit stop. He's got to get in and out of the car as well. And now for the race lead, Koffler on the attack and again tries the inside at turn 8, but that's not going to work because we know what happens at 9. The road comes back to the Maserati. If anything, now Koffler is under attack from Pierre Kaffer. Great battle this for the race lead, and one of the best GT2 races we've had with Carlo Tamburini under huge pressure. Koffler has made good progress, so has Pierre Kaffer, and with the drama going on in Pro-Am here, set to carry on with different drivers aboard into the second stint. Is Tamburini going to fend off Koffler all the way to the pit stop? It's looking marginal now because the KTM goes through on the inside. Brave stuff by Koffler, and finally he has done it. The door just prized open enough to give a KTM-sized gap, and through goes Koffler into the lead of the race. He's worked hard for that, but he deserved it. Reinhard Koffler, the new race leader on lap 13. And that sends Tamburini into the pit lane. So he's lost his lead, he comes in and will put Leonardo Guarini behind the car, whereas Koffler will do 1, maybe even 2 more laps just to try and stretch the advantage a little bit over the, in real terms, Hezemans and Dodonka Mercedes, because although Pierre Kaffer is between them, Michael Doppelmayr in his qualifying session was the slowest, and therefore his lap times I don't think are going to keep that car necessarily in that leading battle. So it means really it's going to be a fight between Martin Koch, who will relay Koffler. There, Lego, Leonardo Guarini, in for Tamburini, and Eric Dodonka, who will take over that orange and silver Mercedes from Loris Hezemans. But right now, Koffler getting away, isn't he? 0.8 of a second was the margin when they came over the line, and he's just done the absolute best first sector because now he's got clear track space ahead of him. He's not caught up behind the Maserati. He can just push, and he is doing so. Look to stretch that lead. The Maserati, don't forget, has to serve the regulation line-to-line pit stop of 132 seconds and the extra 10 by winning yesterday's race. Second overall, second in Pro-Am, Pierre Kaffer versus Loris Hezemans. They're number 1, still in the pit lane, serving the regulation time, Carlo Tamburini. So initially you think that was a long stop, but then of course they all have to cycle through for everybody. So it's only really an extra 3 seconds that car has to serve over 812 KTM. And 5 seconds for the Loris Hezemans Mercedes. So where is the next car in the queue after that? It'll be Simon Birch, but he's 4.8 seconds adrift. So Simon Birch, not that far adrift of Hezemans, might get the KTM ahead of the Mercedes when the cars serve the pit stops. Guarini is in the Maserati number 1, waiting for the LP Racing team to give him the signal that he can go, but not yet, he can't. Pierre Kaffer, who will go to the end of the window probably. Then Michael Doppelmayr will take over, is now 1.2 seconds back from Koffler, who's had a real push early on since he got the lead. Being able to break clear. Away goes Guarini, and Reinhard Koffler, incidentally, doing the fastest lap of the race last time through. So Koffler on lap 15 now. Away from the pits goes Leonardo Guarini, but what we really need to wait for is these 3 to make pit stops. Then we'll see how the order has been shuffled. Remember that the Koffler KTM has 3 seconds fewer to serve in the pit lane, and Pierre Kaffer's Audi has no extra time to serve because it wasn't in the top 3 yesterday. 5 seconds extra for the Mercedes behind of Hezemans and Dodonka. The race has 24 minutes still to run, and 4 minutes of that pit window, therefore. So Reinhard Koffler from Pierre Kaffer, 2 of the real star drivers in the GT2 series, come up towards the line. Over the beam goes Koffler, puts 15 laps in the book, and in so doing, not quite as quick that time around. Pierre Caffer behind him, laps fractionally slower as well, so it's still advantage KTM, and none of those top three as yet interested in pitting. Klaus Angerhofer, for the moment, takes over the lead of Am before giving way to Sedi Samini. But in a race where the faster driver starts, it makes sense that the pits have been fairly quiet. It's more of a surprise, actually, that Tamburini came in when he did. You heard pre-race Leonardo Guarini talking about being reactive to what was going on, but Tamburini, I would have thought, would still be able to do decent lap times, even if he was behind Reinhard Koffler, because he'd be chasing after Koffler, who we know is quick, but the team electing to bring him in. Leonardo Guarini, of course, therefore, will be up to speed sooner than the other Stint 2 drivers. So possibly that's going to put him in better stead. He'll be a bit more comfortable, possibly, when we get into the second part of the race, because he'll have been in the car for longer and have a better feel for what the car, the tyres, the circuit all feel like. Pierre Caffer, in the meantime, charges on up towards turn 12. That's your race leader, Reinhard Koffler, who was 1.3 seconds away last time. Pierre Caffer still chasing, and with 2 minutes and change on the clock for the window, let's see whether first, second or third pit, and the answer is third. Hesemans comes in then, so the Mercedes for the pit road this time. That will relay Eric de Doncker. Hesemans gets to the 50 km/h speed limit line and gently makes his way down the long pit lane here at the Misano World Circuit. A bit like Paul Ricard, this is a track where the pit lane straddles the timing beam, so sometimes the car in the pits has done more laps, even though it's coming on the same lap as cars with the pit before the timing line. New fastest lap of the race, Pierre Caffer, 1:34.9 now, and you can see how that gap has come down. Pierre Caffer seeing whether he can possibly get into the lead before he has to leap out of the car and put Michael Doppelmayr in it. There is Leonardo Guarini then in number 1, who at the moment is, of course, the best of the stoppers. But we need to see where he is in relation to Eric de Doncker after 98 Mercedes has made its stop. So on track now from what was a 4-car battle pack. We're down to 2 with the pit stop cycling through. And it is the 812 KTM in the lead. Reinhard Koffler, 1 second to the good last time. Pierre Caffer having done the fastest lap of the race, much closer to him. And they've got to come in this time, otherwise the window will be closed and they will be outside it. So Reinhard Koffler moves to the pit lane, so behind him will Pierre Caffer. So the top 2 come to the pit road then, and Simon Birch also needs to be in. He was running in 3rd spot, and he should just about get to the pit lane. Yes, there he is in the background in time. So in is Koffler. Martin Koch will take over. The lollipop waved at Pierre Caffer, and he's going to give way to Michael Doppelmayr. Once he's found his pit box, he was going the wrong way for a moment, though. He was heading in a little early and then jinked back to the right, but he's parked now. Away goes de Doncker, and he will rejoin with Leonardo Guarini bearing down on him. So the Mercedes is away, but it's a long drive yet down the pit lane, and then the pit exit line is a long way round the first corner. So the Mercedes will be back on track now. Eric de Doncker accelerates out of the pit lane as into turn 1 comes Leonardo Guarini. So the Mercedes, by the look of it, jumps ahead of the Maserati, but Guarini, of course, is already up to speed, whereas it'll take de Doncker a lap or so just to get fully appraised of what the car is like, what it feels like now, having had an earlier stint by Hesemans. There is Guarini then, so he drops behind the Mercedes, the car that led early on. Now you see the effect of these compensation pit stops. It puts a shuffled order into the second stint, and Eric de Doncker now ahead of Leonardo Guarini. Simon Birch giving way in number 80. So now that car to be taken over by Thomas Anderson. They've had quite a lot of bad luck this weekend with mechanical woe, but I think now that car should be okay. He's had good pace in this race. So Simon Birch gives the car to Thomas Anderson, who's raced in the Le Mans Cup. Wiper on, Alexandre Leroy's Maserati. That car for the moment has lost its AM lead to Sedi Samini. because of course it would be a longer pit stop for the Maserati. They're 18 down the pit lane, so Michael Doppelmayr takes over and moves ahead of Martin Koch as well because of the shorter pit stop. So the Audi ahead at the moment as it goes down the pit lane, but I suspect Martin Koch may be able to get ahead, in fact, even on this outlap. This is Gorini, there is Doppelmayr, behind him is Martin Koch. So away goes Doppelmayr. And is he ahead of de Donker's Mercedes? Yes, he is, just. And so is Martin Koch. And I think also, so is going to be Thomas Anderson. So that's the leading car now, number 18. Michael Doppelmayr at the wheel of it. In second place will be Martin Koch in the green KTM. In third place, looks like it is going to be Thomas Anderson. In fourth is Eric de Donker's Mercedes. And then in fifth is Leonardo Gorini, whose Maserati led the opening stint, or the bulk of the opening stint. But that is not to suggest that's the order to the very end. Look at the way that Doppelmayr is already being caught a little bit by Martin Koch. And there for third place, the gap coming down as well as Thomas Anderson is being caught by Eric de Donker, who's a lap further into his stint and therefore just a little bit more comfortable already. So it's getting up to speed and getting on with the programme as quickly as you can, which obviously you expect the pro drivers to do, but the AMs, it is going to be done at differing levels. Martin Koch already on the attack then to go ahead of Michael Doppelmayr, and through he goes. Doppelmayr doesn't offer a huge amount of resistance to all of that, sees the KTM coming and lets Koch go. They didn't do anything about taping up the flapping bodywork in the pits, but that car not being phased by it, not being slowed as he comes now round turn 14. So the new race leader, Martin Koch, that puts the 812 KTM back into the lead with now just under 17 minutes of the race to go. Is Koch going to get away, or is there another car in the pack that is going to be able to up its pace and go after him? Well, we'll find out as he comes across the line. So the race order now is 812 KTM from 18 Audi. That means it's Koch from Doppelmayr. He's being caught in turn by number 80 of Thomas Anderson, who's being caught by 98 of Eric de Donker. And then fifth, look, number 1, Leonardo Gorini, who's got a lot of traffic to wriggle through. Doppelmayr is going to be passed there by Anderson. It won't be long before de Donker moves ahead of Doppelmayr as well. Easily done round the outside, coming out of turn 3. And Leonardo Gorini is right up with the Audi as well, so he'll get past him probably coming out of turn 6 in a moment, and then Gorini can go storming off after the traffic ahead. So out of turn 6 onto the short straight, and the Maserati lines up for a move on the inside. Doppelmayr perhaps now being a little bit harder to pass because he's getting a bit more confident in the car, but he still loses out at the end of that straight as throw on the inside line does go Gorini. Right, now he's got a big chase on his hands because he was 8.3 seconds back from Martin Koch. There's the leader coming out of turn 10. And the run now down into turns 11 and 12 towards the end of the lap, then into that stadium section, with Thomas Anderson now up into second place. Eric de Donker is third. Fourth is Gorini, and Michael Doppelmayr already down to fifth place. There he is. The Audi falling away from Gorini's Maserati. Now, what about sector times? Gorini in the first sector, not quite as quick as Martin Koch, in fact, and nor was he as quick in the second sector. So the progress that Gorini makes here might be limited. Now the leading KTM goes over the line. Reinhard Kofler did a great early stint. Antonio's caught up with him in the pit lane.
Reini, what an incredible battle you were giving us out there.
Yeah, it was really a nice, tough battle. There were all the good guys in the front, and I think we all enjoyed a lot. It was a huge fun, and I knew because of our partner Martin, he's also quite strong, so I don't want to risk too much in the overtake. But then I chose the high-speed corner, and it was really a nice overtake, and we could still get a little bit of a gap, and now it looked like we are in the top 3, or we are leading at the moment, so I hope Martin enjoy it and bring it home for our first victory in 24 for KTM and SRO Motorsport.
Brilliant. Well, best of luck with that. Thank you very much.
You.
Thumbs up from an all smiles Reinhard Kofler. And yeah, Martin Koch is doing a good job right now in number 812, the second driver aboard that KTM. And Martin Koch, who's driven in GT4 a little bit, coming into GT2 at the back end of last year. Alexandre Leroy needs to switch off the wiper, but we've got a good battle on here for the lead of AM, look, because number 16, Serhi Samini, is ahead of Leroy. And the two of them down towards turn 8. Serhi Samini has been another stalwart GT2 racer really since the category began with KTMs. Alexandre Leroy new to it this year, but he's overcoming, remember, a longer pit stop. He had to serve 7 seconds, whereas there was no time served extra by the KTM just up the road ahead. So Alexandre Leroy charging along, trying to get back onto terms with Sarmani, and he's almost there, look, as they come into turn 12. Whether that wiper is a distraction or not remains to be discovered, but for the moment he's not in a hurry to turn it off, even if he can turn it off. So up towards turns 12 and 13 they come. Now 14 beckons, the hairpin that brings them up towards the completion nearly of the lap. Last lap through, Alexandre Leroy was slightly quicker, and a big slide from both. Leroy has to switch sides there, goes to the inside, but still can't quite get past Sarmini, but it's looking a little bit more like when rather than if the AM lead goes the way of Alexandre Leroy, who's been on the podium this year but hasn't had a win. Gorini now goes for second place up on the inside of Thomas Anderson. So he's picked off Dodonka, now he's picked off the KTM, and Leonardo Gorini through into second place, 13 minutes to go effectively, and he's 8.5 seconds back from Martin Koch, but Koch's pace is still good enough, I think, to keep him ahead to the end. This will be the best result of the year for the Thomas Anderson Simon Birch KTM if it makes it for third, and Eric Dodonka in fourth place there in the Mercedes. Michael Doppelmayr is a rather distant fifth now, and I just wonder not only whether Sedi Sarmini can fend off Alexandre Leroy for the AM lead, but whether he won't catch and pass Doppelmayr in the next couple of laps as well. That gap's coming down for 5th, 6th, 7th overall. Right, Gorini now on a mission. Clear road ahead of him. Only one more car to pass, and it is the leading car. And now that he's got through the traffic, his sector time's a little bit quicker. There's the answer to the Doppelmayr question. He is about to be passed. So alongside him is Sarmini. Alexandre Leroy also buys into this and tries to get the Maserati through on the inside, which he will do because the road favours him on the inside line. He's got the job done even before the kink anyway. So that puts Sarmini up into 5th. It puts Leroy up into 6th. It puts Doppelmayr down to 7th. And Dominic Olbert's not that far behind him either in 8th place. Through they turn once more. So now coming up through turn 15 is Michael Doppelmayr, and those are the two cars that have gone past, carrying on their AM lead battle. So for 5th place now, Sedi Sarmini goes through. Alexandre Leroy was 6/10 back. He's about half a second back this time, so he's almost there. But Sedi Sarmini has got a lot of experience of the KTM, and therefore he's going to be keen to use that to good effect and try and stave off the challenge of Leroy behind him. Out of turn 4 and 5, this is 6, where certainly the race leading cars have been taking lots and lots of curbs. Sedi Sarmini a little bit more reserved, in fact, on that lap. Alexandre Leroy, peering through the imaginary rain, is still there behind him in 6th, second in class, and it's the class battle that they're really after. Sedi Sarmini then hangs on to the lead for the moment, and 10.5 minutes just over remain for Leroy to make that move. Sedi Sarmini, the Austrian bronze graded driver, ahead of Alexandre Leroy, the Frenchman, also bronze graded. They come wide out of turn 10. This is lap 22. Of course, the number of laps that they're going to get in the 50 minutes slightly reduced with that early safety car period. Alexandre Leroy then hustling on. Up front, 8 seconds now between Koch and Gorini, and Leonardo Gorini comes across the timing line, and we'll see whether the gap between the leading Pro-Ams is up, or if it's down, it is down a little, 7.7 seconds. So it's going in the right direction, but not quickly enough, I would propose. Meantime, Sedi Sarmini withstanding the pressure, is he not, from Alexandre Leroy? The Maserati howls its way over the line, the KTM through ahead, and the margin between the two AM leading cars is 0.4 of a second. It's down a little bit further as more pressure is applied by Alexandre Leroy now. They turn their way up from turn 3, that short run towards the hairpin. Down through the gears goes Leroy, brakes late, uses lots of curb on the inside. That was 4, second element 5, and now to the back part of the circuit. You're parallel with the pit straight, and as we've seen already in this race, a real dive going into turn 8 can pay dividends, and Leroy has a go up the inside line for the AM lead. Can't do it though. Sedi Simoni just fends him off, but then he runs wide. Leroy on the power. Can he get ahead before the next corner? Because he'll be on the outside line, the wrong line if he's not careful. He gives Simoni room. What he now needs is to try to get the undercut coming off the corner, and he does so on the inside curve and all. Side by side for the AM lead. Contact between the two. And Alexander Leroy lent there on the KTM. That rather forced Sedi Simoni up over the curbs. Well, the class lead changes, but I think as the power kicked in, the Maserati almost got away from Alexander Leroy. So he had to quickly correct that. But while he was in the middle of his drama, he got into the side of Sedi Simoni. It all looked a bit dramatic, but I don't think there was any malice aforethought in that. Sedi Simoni, though, does drop back behind Alexander Leroy, and the Maserati now is through. Let's have another look. See what the plan is. He can't get ahead at turn 9, so back out of that. Go for the inside line. The door is open, and there, off the curb. Now, as Leroy accelerates, the two of them just glance off each other. I think it was possibly just the two lines kind of overlapping as they came off the corner. But Leroy does indeed now lead the AM category from Sedi Simoni. And that's the overall race leader, who is being caught. Martin Koch, with 8 minutes to go, is 6.6 seconds up on Leonardo Guarini. So Lego having a real push here to see what he can do about the lead car, and it's going in the right direction, or it was, but he's just lost out, in fact, in the first sector of this lap. We'll see whether time can be brought back in sector 2. The window there, by the look of it, peeling out of the side of the KTM, and is that going to act as an air brake? I don't think that's been done deliberately by Martin Koch. It looks like it's just popped open. The next part of this is whether race control want that car in for it to be closed. It's not ideal ventilation. Martin Koch, when he's got a chance, will try to close that, assuming he can reach it, because you're anchored low into the car. Movement is not anything like as easy as it is in a road car. Plus, you're a bit busy doing everything else behind the wheel. That contact between Simoni and Leroy is going to be looked at after the race, incidentally. Down towards turn 1 goes Martin Koch. And there is Guarini, 5.7 seconds back. So over the course of the lap, he was able to close the gap down. And with that flapping window, Martin Koch's progress might be being impeded a little bit more. So 5.7 seconds is now the margin, and 6.5 minutes are on the clock. It's going to be touch and go, this, given the way that Guarini is absolutely flying now. Thomas Andersson's KTM still runs third. In fourth place, it remains the Eric de Donker Mercedes. Hesitate, because there is number 90. That's now Dominic Olbert getting himself ahead of Sedi Simoni. That is for second in AM. So Simoni, who was leading the class after the pit stops, we saw him lose out to Leroy. He's now lost out to Dominic Olbert and goes down to third in the category. So disappointment for Sedi Simoni and for the car's start driver, Klaus Angerhofer, because it's dropped down to third in class now, with just under 6 minutes of the race to go. In the lead battle, the KTM looks quicker through the first sector, which you could argue has got more twiddly bits in it, and it's in the second and third where the Maserati has the strength. There, on target for an AM win, but also, of course, for a long pit stop in the next race, is going to be Alexander Leroy. So upholding honour in AM with the demise of the LP Racing Philippe Pret car. Alexander Leroy then makes his way up to turn 15. The next races in GT2 European Series will be supporting the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa. It's the next stop, the championship running in permanent support of Fanatec GT World Challenge this year. In the past, it's had its occasional away races with things like ADAC GT or French GT, but this year it's all with Fanatec GT World Challenge, sprint or endurance, and the lead gap continues to come down. 5.1 seconds last time through. Towards us comes Martin Koch, but with 4.5 minutes on the clock, I think he's probably done enough. He only has to win by a tenth of a second, as long as he wins. Leonardo Guarini is still pushing, no question about that, but he's not getting close enough. There in the background is the Maserati. Comes now with the lights are flashing, more again to try and distract the lead driver more than anything else. Down they come towards the end of this 26th lap. Through turn 11 and 12 and 13. Go right, go right, go right. Each corner tighter than the one before it. So over the line, 4 more minutes to run here for the KTM. Martin Koch goes through. Behind him, Leonardo Gorini accelerates by. And 4.2 seconds it's come down to. So on that lap, it was very nearly a full second pulled back by Gorini, but he's still got too much to do, I'm afraid. It's going to be close, but he's going to run out of time, despite the great efforts. Having said all of that, if Martin Koch makes a tiny mistake, things can all change. There is the lead KTM then, still pressing on over the curb, a little bit wide goes Gorini. And again, in sector 1, the rather more twisty nature of the track, it favours the KTM. Second and third sectors, where perhaps a bit more power is needed, goes the way of the Maserati. So right now, 4.2 seconds is the margin, and there Gorini certainly not giving up, pressing on. 3 minutes of the race to go now. As they turn again down to turn 11, the flapping window not being any real impediment, it seems, as far as Martin Koch is concerned. Turns up now through 14, and 2.5 minutes, 2 more laps, I would suggest he's going to have to do. And the more laps, really the better for Gorini, because that gives him more opportunities to close. The Maserati out wide over the curb. So 4.2 seconds last time around was the margin. And now as they come over the timing line, let's have a look, because 4.2 plays against the new gap of, wait for it to be revealed on the timing screen, 3.8 seconds. So 3.8 it is between Koch and Gorini. So it's down, but not by that much on that lap. So Gorini now finding it harder and harder to really make the progress that he needs. Out of turn 4 and 5 comes the car that won yesterday's race. Bear in mind that the jump start that is still hovering over this car, the investigation will be done after the race. So even if Gorini finishes second on the road, there's no guarantee that's going to be the final finishing position for this car. It goes now up to turn 9, still chasing after Martin Koch, and in the first sector again, fractionally slower. There'll be 1 more lap at the end of this. There's time for 1 more before the checkered flag. Out of turn 11 goes the KTM, and on this part of the circuit, again, slightly quicker is Gorini, but only slightly. And we might yet get a change for 4th place. Look, Alexander Leroy, 3 seconds back from Dodonka, but lapping quicker by about 2.5 seconds. So he's going to be with him, potentially, going on to the last lap. Still with the wiper moving, but it's not phasing Alexander Leroy as he accelerates then down into turn 11. Works his way now out of the kink. So an AM victory beckons, but he'd quite like another place overall, would he not, to get ahead of the Eric Dodonka-driven Mercedes. The leaders have just gone by, 3.6 seconds between them onto the last lap. That's too much for Gorini to make up. Martin Koch has managed to stabilise that gap now, and he is on target for a victory. As long as he doesn't make a mistake, he will be quids in come the end of this. There is Alexander Leroy. So the AM leader, you can see how much closer he's getting to Dodonka, and then behind Leroy is Dominic Olbert. Now, Olbert was 2.4 seconds, make it now 1.7 seconds back. That's closing up nicely, and if, look, Leroy gets delayed here by Dodonka, that might just give Dominic Olbert the chance to get close enough to attack on the final lap of the race. Up they come, still scrapping. They're going through is Dominic Olbert, a little bit wide maybe coming out of turn 4, but he's on the attack most definitely as they come now onto that back straight for the final time. And Leroy on the attack against Dodonka, doesn't need to get past him, but it might be useful to get a cushion between himself and Dominic Olbert to protect the AM lead here. They're going up towards turn 10, race leaders coming towards the end of the last lap as there Alexander Leroy again attacks on the outside line. but Dodonka fends him off, at least for the moment. That's Martin Koch, who is on target for a first victory of the year within GT2 European Series. Flapping window or not, he's on target for a win. Out of turn 16 he comes. Reinhard Koffler started. Martin Koch brings it home to win the second race of the weekend in Fanatec GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli. Second is going to go the way provisionally, 2.5 seconds back of Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini. Third should be Thomas Andersson and Simon Birch. And then this is 4th, 5th, 6th, and also the AM win for either Alexander Leroy or Dominic Albert, who is right there behind him. Look, coming down towards turn 16. Albert needed another lap, but look, he's really quick out of turn 16, gets up alongside Alexander Leroy. 2 wheels on the grass as they come across the line. It's a virtual dead heat between the two. I reckon Alexander Leroy was just ahead, and he was by 77 thousandths of a second. Wow, what a finish. And as I say, another lap, and Dominic Albert would have done that, but he was absolutely committed coming out of the last corner. Curb, grass, you name it, he used it to try to get up alongside, and this was how they crossed the line. Leroy couldn't go any quicker because he had the Mercedes ahead of him, but look, 2 wheels on the grass. Dominic Albert fighting the car back onto the road, and as they got to the line, just ahead was the Maserati, 77 thousandths of a second being the margin. So, despite the fact we lost a big chunk of cars early on, a lively race, that's for sure. And the winning car, the KTM, there it is. Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler driving offline over the extra rubber put down to just lift the car up for the ride height check, and also to add to the weight of the car. In the background is the Michael Doppelmayr Audi that in the end fell to last place. So Michael Doppelmayr, who came out of the pits in the lead, lost a lap against Martin Koch and finished in 10th spot. But a really good drive by Martin and by Reinhard Koffler, who did the first stint in that car. Let's look at the results then of race 2 of the weekend in Fanatec GT2 European Series. Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler take the win from Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini. Thomas Andersson in 3rd, with Simon Birch, then Eric Dodonka and Loris Hezemans 4th. 5th, the winning AM, Alexander Leroy, his first win of the year, ahead of Dominic Albert and Dennis Liebel from the back of the grid, and Seti Samani and Klaus Angerhofer 3rd in AM. 8th overall, Pascal Gibon and Christophe Bourret, ahead of Hubert Trunkenpoltz and Laura Kreimer, and Pierre Caffer and Michael Doppelmayr coming home in 10th place. So, as I say, might not have the longest list of finishers, but it was certainly a lively race, and Laura Kreimer there applauding Martin Koch as he comes down as a race winner into the Parc Fermé area. So KTM from Maserati from KTM in Pro-Am and in Am, Maserati from KTM from KTM. In a moment, Martin Koch will wriggle out of the car. Reinhard Koffler very, very happy. So too Martin Koch, who is going to make the most of this win as they climb up atop the car. All smiles, the two Austrians. Oh, sorry, Austrian and Swiss. Martin Koch, the Swiss, Austrian Reinhard Koffler. But the KTM brand, which has been big, big supporter of the GT2 concept, taking a victory. Lots of applause for Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini as well for their second place. Martin Koch, the warrior, about to take off his crash helmet and revelling in the win. Thomas Andersson and Simon Birch, their best of the year for 3rd place. The SRO team making sure they've got the drivers with their winning Pirelli hats ready for the interviews and for the podium. And talking of interviews, Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler will no doubt be very, very happy after that. Reinhard Koffler was in buoyant mood during the race. Now it's a win. We'll hear from them in a moment or two because Antonia is down there. Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler win GT2 Race 2.
Ryan and Martin, congratulations. In a race that was filled with action from start to end, you did amazingly.
Yeah, thank you. It was really a good race. So I really enjoyed it. It was a blast. I mean, the beginning, Ryan had a huge, massive fight with Maserati, right? And after we had like a bit of distance, but I had to control it. So it was very nice. So like this win means a lot to me. Like,
Well, we really enjoyed watching it as well.
thank you.
Yeah, it was just great. The team worked so well the whole weekend, and KTM gave us a great car. MZR really put it on the point, and like you say, the race start was a pleasure to fight with these guys, and then seeing Martin really driving a high-level stint in the end, and did an awesome job. So our first win this year, and now comes a lot more.
Yeah.
Hopefully a lot more. Yeah, well done. Go and celebrate, guys.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
So, first win of the year, and of course, next time out, a longer pit stop. But despite that flapping window, didn't affect Martin Koch, who, as you were hearing, had an absolute blast and a very, very good drive indeed. Martin Koch then coming home with Reinhard Koffler as our race 2 winner from Leonardo Guarini, and Carlo Tamburini in second place, and then third, Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch, with Alexander Leroy taking a maiden AM victory, making up for other Maserati disappointment. But there was just no stopping the Koch-Koffler KTM, despite Leonardo Guarini's best efforts. There is, of course, still the possible jump start to factor in for number 1, but the race officials will go and have a look at that now that the race is at an end. Now let's hear from Alexander Leroy next, the AM winner for Maserati, Alexander Leroy with Antonia.
Alex, that was action right up until the finish line. Almost a photo finish there. You must be sweating.
Yes, and very happy because it's the first. I didn't know the Misano, donc the first drive for me, and I'm very happy to be the first in the second race.
How are you going to make this continue throughout the rest of the season?
Yes, good driving, coaching, and physical. Because only one driver, I'm the only driver, so it's very physical.
Well, keep it up. Very well deserved today. Congratulations.
Thank you, madam.
So Alexander Leroy, as he makes the point, a solo driver, so working on fitness as well as everything else, and he's still a relatively inexperienced driver, so learning and getting better all the time. Great drive. He just managed to fend off the KTM Dominic Albert by those 77 thousandths of a second. So the drivers now make their way up to the podium, from where the celebrations will come in a few minutes' time. And the next round, as I say, for the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa, that's when they will be in action over the final weekend of June. Jean-Luc Boblic, incidentally, being asked to go and see the stewards about the incident at the start. Carlo Tamburini being asked to go and see the stewards about the start of the race from his perspective. So, again, although we're going to have a podium, there are things still being looked at. There is the podium. There are the drivers, all with their tales to tell. And it'll be a slightly frustrated Dominic Albert, who now knows what 77 thousandths of a second looks like. But Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini, all smiles. So too Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler, as the drivers now are going to be called forward. It is going to be the Simon Birch and Thomas Anderson partnership for third in Pro-Am that is called to the podium first of all. They've had a bit of bad luck, these two, in earlier races, either with incidents or penalties, but it's all come good today with the podium finish, well deserved. There for second place, yesterday's winners, Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini. Good drive by the Maserati duo. And then for the winning team, Motorsport Zentrum Reed, and that means the two drivers of Reinhard Koffler and Martin Koch step forward to lots of applause. First win of the year, Martin Koch, all smiles. Good to have Reinhard Koffler back in high-profile mainstream racing, because he was a very, very quick single-seater gun a long time ago. And here he is on the Misano podium as a race winner. So congratulations to the winning KTM drivers, Martin Koch, Reinhard Koffler, and the trophies now brought forward for the Pro-Am teams. To Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch. Then the trophies from Andrea Albani, the managing director of Misano World Circuit, to fellow countrymen Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini. But Carlo will have to go and see the race officials to explain that start, so whether the trophy is kept remains to be seen. The team's trophy, not much doubt about that. They're the winners' trophies with the flag of Italy, with the Misano circuit outline for Martin Koch, for Reinhard Koffler. Race 2 winners here at Misano. And even though it's not yet 10:30, the champagne sprays. Simon Birch, Thomas Anderson enjoying their first visit to the podium for the Razzoon Milvan Racing team. And a 1-3 for KTMs, although run by different teams, of course. And a clink of the bottles all round. The great camaraderie that the GT2 concept promotes, evident there. And nice to see the team getting a swig of champagne as well. It doesn't always happen. The drivers normally waste it all. Right, the Pro-Am top 3 then make their way from the podium. Next stop, Spa for GT2. And this is how we look in the championship now. Just 1 point splitting Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini from Reinhard Koffler and Martin Koch. Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch up to 3rd. And 4th, Loris Hezemans and Eric de Doncker. Serhi Samani there with Hubert Trunkenpolz, 3rd in AM. The 2nd AM crew, Dennis Liebel and Dominic Albert, will be there somewhere. And Alexander Leroy, as the AM winner, will be ready to step forward onto the podium as well. Serhi Samani there on the right as you look. And the drivers then ready for the AM podium. Serhi Samani and Klaus Angerhofer come forward first for the True Racing KTM team. Serhi Samani couldn't quite fend off the opposition to the very end, but still a podium result. And it's all totally gentlemanly after you, Claude, or after you, Hubert in this case, onto the 3rd step. But a podium result is good. The KTMs, although they're quick, as we've seen, can have their occasional moments. And a bit of bad luck has also befallen Samani and Angerhofer in the past. There for 2nd place, Dominic Albert and Dennis Liebel. So, oh so close to a win, but it was the TFT Racing Maserati by 77 thousandths of a second that hung on to win, and that means that for the top step comes Alexander Leroy, his first win in Fanatec GT2 European Series, and a great drive, just holding on to that win at the very end. Alexander Leroy then celebrates his race win here at Misano for the Spanish TFT Racing team. Italian car, Spanish team, French driver, but it all combines very effectively for the win. Bravo, Alexander Leroy, and the trophies then being presented. Serhi Samani and Klaus Angerhofer received them from Matteo Braga from Pirelli. And at the other end of the podium for 2nd place, you have Dominic Albert and Dennis Liebel, who had that moment on his way to the grid, but they've regrouped very impressively. And a first winner's trophy is going to go to not only the TFT team, but also to Alexander Leroy as our AM victor here at Misano. And there's also the Iron Cup for the drivers with a combined age of over 100. And those trophies will go to Serhi Samani and Klaus Angerhofer, by the look of it. But this is where you don't want to appear to know your age, but more trophies. Well done, Serhi Samani and Klaus Angerhofer, the best placed of the combined older age. Right, champagne time, and Alexander Leroy has earned that. And one more lap might have been a different story, but a win is a win, and he can celebrate here at Misano in the 4th race of the year in Fanatec GT2 European Series. Alexander Leroy then inherits the lead of the championship with a non-scoring Philippe Pret behind, and the non-scoring Jean-Luc Bobelic and Gilles Vanelay after that. Then Pascal Gibon and Christophe Bourret ahead of Klaus Angerhofer and Seti Samini. So from Misano to Spa, next for Fanatec GT2 European Series. Let's look at the highlights, though, of a lively second race. It all began with a bang as Jean-Luc Bobelic made a move on the inside, glanced off Ludovic Badet's Mercedes, cannoned into Philippe Pret and Jörg Wiebahn, and put 4 cars out of the race at the first corner. Safety car was deployed, and on the restart, Carlo Tamburini, who was already under investigation for a jump start, led away, chased by Reinhard Koffler and Loris Hezemans. Wasn't long, though, before the Audi of Pierre Caffer got in the mix as well, and we lost on the restart of the race Eric Yanis, just like yesterday, that KTM grinding to a halt. Pierre Caffer relieved Loris Hezemans of 3rd and then set off in pursuit of Koffler, who was all over the back of the race-leading Maserati like a rash. To the inside line, going through turn 11 went Koffler, and brave driving gave him the race lead. The pit window had opened, and the first one in was Carlo Tamburini to give way to Leonardo Guarini. Guarini would rejoin and had a big chase on his hands as the lead in AM changed in favour of the Maserati of Alexander Leroy. There was a bit of contact between him and Seti Samini, but the Maserati went ahead and was just able to stave off the challenge of Dominic Olberg, who wriggled his way up into 2nd place. They were split by 77 thousandths of a second at the end of the race. But it was a win for Reinhard Koffler and Martin Koch, their first victory of 2024 in the Fanatec GT2 European Series.